Okay.
So my first question for you, Jacques, is can you share us more about your vision or perspective on Sacred Journey Breathwork?
So, sacred journey breathwork is kind of a general term that I'm using for the style of breathwork that I use. There is at the moment a lot of breathwork out there. A lot of people have started practicing it. Of course, breathwork is based in, a lot of it is based in yogic styles of breathwork, which tend to be very much more meditation orientated or maybe a counted style of breathing with very specific techniques. And that's perfect for meditation. But what I propose is something completely different. It is about creating a journey, it's about entering the space of the unknown within oneself and also within one's life. To go on a journey for healing, to go on a journey to find what you need to know. It's the archetypal hero's journey taking place, where we look for the spiritual treasure, or we look for the vision or the answer that we need in order to give our lives more meaning. So, on the one hand, this breathwork journey that I propose is sacred. It's about opening ourselves to the sacredness, to the divine, because I believe that when we go into this altered state of consciousness that breathwork offers, we have a very intimate experience of God, Goddess, a very intimate experience of the sacredness of life in general. So that on the one hand is healing. Then on the other hand, this is also a journey. It's a personal journey of us finding the way to that sacredness, of finding the way to our own truth, to the love, to the light within us, so that we can become better versions of ourselves. So, each journey that we'll be doing in these workshops are about getting another piece of the puzzle in our own story so that we can understand ourselves better, so we can be stronger, so we can be healthy, so that we can just basically become better people.
Jacques, you speak about the journey, and we all know about your journey and about your shamanic teachings and the traditions where you studied in. Can you dive a little bit deeper into the connection with nature and the shamanic traditions related to that sacred journey?
Yes, so I think at the moment in the world, the majority of people, certainly in the West, are facing an identity crisis when it comes to spirituality. Many people have rejected the religions they've grown up in, and many people are curious about Buddhism and Hinduism, for example, which is beautiful because those religions have beautiful things to offer us. But at the end of the day, I feel we need to really reconnect to nature. We need to reconnect to the land where we live and to feel the forces and work with the natural forces that are around us. So obviously, we as a society, an urban society on the whole, have lost connection to nature. And that's not only about how we spend our days. That's not only about our understanding of the cycles of nature and of where we get our food from, for example. But it's also about actually how we connect to the divine through nature within our world. And there are so many philosophies, there are so many ideas about what God and Goddess is. But I think one of the most practical and powerful ways is to actually be directly in nature and to feel the forces of nature and to go into that open space, that sacred journey within nature, feeling those presences with you that speak a language that the body understands, has understood for hundreds of thousands of years. So it really is a means for us to get back into our primal being, as opposed to head-based, dogma-based ideas about what God is and what God isn't. It's about having a direct experience. So again, the breathwork gives us a direct experience of the divine, even when we're doing breathwork in our bedroom. And then when we do breathwork, for example, in nature, it makes that even more powerful.
I've one question. Can you give an example where you see and feel it nowadays in the world, in maybe Europe or in Asia or South America?
So certainly Bali is an incredible example of how this very nature-based religion has stayed alive. And I think all religions that still have a strong natural aspect, for example, like Shintoism in Japan, Hinduism in Bali, of course, Hinduism in India as well, there's still a very strong connection to nature itself, to the divinities, the spirits of the mountains or the streams around the people, where they live. But in the example of Hinduism, for example, there's also a broader theology around that. There are the broader generalized stories that perhaps give a more universal layer to the religion, whereas in the direct contact with nature, one can then have a direct contact with these forces of nature or forces of the divine. And that is something that, of course, in the West, we've basically lost completely. In ancient Rome, ancient Greece, that was very much part of the religion. You had the nymphs, the nature spirits, the understanding that certain mountains were sacred. And that has been basically completely destroyed. Although many of the churches, or most of the churches, were built on old temples or were built on old power points. So those locations have an inherent power in themselves. Building a church or a temple on top of that strengthens and heightens the energy. It focuses the energy. So when we go into those places to worship, we have a much more powerful experience of the divine. So in that sense, it has stayed alive, but it's become divorced from nature, generally speaking, in the West. I mean, in Italy, for example, there's still a lot of sacred caves, where churches have been built into the caves. And within those caves, one has these really incredible experiences. So that energy is alive, especially still in Asia, many parts of Asia, especially within the shamanic traditions of South America, specifically Peru. Peru is very alive with the magic of nature, of the old temples. Even though some of those old temples are abandoned, a lot of people still go there to pray and to make offerings. So they are very alive. And I really believe that we in the West need to rediscover how to do that. We need to rediscover how to have a spiritual experience within nature, not purely, let's say, an ecological experience or an experience of the beauty, but a true divine connection to nature. It's so healing. Our bodies, our subconscious minds understand that on a very profound level. And whenever we go into nature, we always feel refreshed. So when we heighten that with a sacred practice, we really intensify that experience.
Jenny and I, we visited the monastery, and then you do feel, when you visit a monastery or a church, you do feel that intense energy, that healing energy. Even if you're not religious and you go into a church, and there's so many beautiful buildings and churches in Germany, they're huge and they're beautifully decorated outside and in, and you calm down when you go into church, and you don't even need to pray. It's just the presence of those buildings that you can feel they were built on something.
I think what's happened in Europe and the West in general is we've turned science into a religion, and kind of an objective, universalized reality, which has stripped the sacred out of our everyday experiences. And yes, these monasteries and churches absolutely still hold those energies. And it's kind of something we forget about. We kind of get busy. Some people maybe still go to church on Sundays, but most people don't go to churches or temples just to sit and to contemplate and to have an experience. And those spaces were specifically built for us to have a greater connection to the divine. Whatever whatever name you want to put to that God or divinity, that's not really the point, I don't think. I think it really is about actually having a dedicated holy space that gives us that experience that is so important for our health and balance in modern society.
Yes, and I'd like to add that especially in Germany, a lot of young people are not connected to any religion anymore, or they're in search of divinity, and they go to yoga and they do the yogic pranayama and all these things, but there's still an aspect missing because they want to have that deep connection with the culture of Germany, the old culture, the old way of being connected to nature.
With the old pagan religions like the Celts or the Vikings, the Norse religions, or the Greek and Roman religions, they were very similar to Hinduism. Most ancient religions were simply about observing the forces of nature, seeing the divine in everyday or very powerful, extraordinary phenomena, and actually starting to revere those forces as some sort of higher element or some sort of divinity. And we can get that back, and we need to get that back. And it's actually very simple. We just kind of need to get beyond our very intellect-based thinking and understand that when we go to nature, for example, we're opening a dialogue with the spirits. We're opening a dialogue with what's around us, with the actual energies. And whether you want to call that a personalized god or goddess, or whether you just see that as a force that has a particular energy, that has a particular personality, it doesn't matter, but it's actually about that direct experience. And again, the work with, let's say, breathwork or other ways of accessing altered states of consciousness allows us to have that dialogue in a much clearer and focused way.
There's lots of hesitation, especially in Germany or in North Europe, because of the witch hunts, to connect with nature and to connect with those potent areas of nature where you can pray and sing and dance. It's all been stripped, and people are very hesitant to connect with all these things because they don't know if that would bring them back into a dangerous situation or something like that.
And yeah, people are scared of also being seen as being crazy, and I think science certainly would call that sort of thing crazy because it's not something you can quantify. It's not something that you can explain in a rational way. But the actual feeling, the release of sacred dance or some sort of natural force coming in and interacting with us isn't quantifiable. And I think the power is in learning to listen again, so that we can actually learn to observe and to see what is a good energy here, what is something that we can actually work with for our own growth and for the growth of nature and for our community.